Wow, did you hear this? Kamala is the plagiarist, the grand plagiarizer. I got to say, you had to see this one coming, right? This shouldn't come as a shock to absolutely anyone, but the question is, will it matter as much for Kamala as it did way back in 1988 when our corruptocrat-in-chief was caught doing the very same thing?
It reappeared in the New York Times with a new charge, that Biden had appropriated a famous litany from the late Robert Kennedy about what the gross national product cannot measure.
It cannot measure the health of our children.
The health of our children.
The quality of our education.
The quality of their education.
The joy of their play.
For the joy of their play.
Biden gave Kennedy no credit. He has also quoted or paraphrased John Kennedy, Hubert Humphrey, and British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock.
Yeah, that actually derailed his presidency way back when shit like that mattered. That's right. The RFK ripoff was a second instance after Biden was already found to have used phrases from British parliamentarian Neil Kinnock. So, did Kamala, did you just take a big old bite of that apple that just fell off the old crusty Biden oak tree, Kamala? But also, given what we've seen, or let's say being burdened by what we've seen and been through and heard, there's 0.0 surprise that Kamala, like her boss Joe, would rather plagiarize lines than come up with them herself. More proof we're dealing with a low IQ candidate, folks. But when the reports are that she plagiarizes the same way old Joe has his whole career, there's precisely zero shock created, certainly at this desk. And when Kamala falls apart, when the teleprompter goes out, remember that? No shocker there either. Kamala, we now see, is only able to participate in a town hall with the help of a teleprompter. This is not a woman of unique or complicated thoughts, unless she's talking about things like equity, the burden of what has been, space, or yellow school buses. Kamala Marx, Kamala, doesn't really have anything unique to offer or to say, for that matter. Barack Obama, let's be honest, Barack Obama was a master orator. He was slick talking, sure, but he knew how to say things and to own ideas, make them his own, masterfully, like a snake oil salesman. But he was very good at it. Trump is also, he's funny as hell. He is so unique, there'll never be another Donald Trump politician like him. I mean, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats of the people that live there. That is funny as hell. And Kamala, well, she hasn't even tried to separate herself from the worst policies of the worst president in history. Remember, Kamala, I better say it right, Kamala, they'll call me racist, wouldn't change a thing, not a single thing.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
First of all, nothing comes to mind, shocker there, unless she wouldn't change a thing. Would not change a thing, just like Kamala wouldn't change a thing about a text she ripped off. But here's the thing, plagiarism, it's a lie. It's a big one when you're a student in school, by the way. It's a crime Joe Biden was also guilty of, well, when he was in law school.
Joseph Biden admitted today that he committed plagiarism when he was in law school. He said it was a mistake, but that it was unintentional.
He quoted 5 pages of someone else's work without proper citation.
I've done some dumb things.
So you see, young Joseph, young Joseph, you will do many dumb things again and again. But he cheated. He lied. He plagiarized, folks. And it's a massive thing when you're in school. You're thrown out dishonorably. And when a journalist is caught plagiarizing, they're typically banned from getting a job in the media, and rightfully so. And when you lose the public trust, you should be unemployable. The same should be true for a politician times a billion, especially one that wants to run for president. Once upon a time in American history, a crooked politician with a knack for stealing lines and telling lies became a Delaware senator. And that set up an illustrious career of swamp diving, flip-flopping, dishonesty, and treasonous capers. But Joe Biden was stopped short of becoming president once upon a time, because this country cared about such things once upon a time, about someone who not only passes off ideas and thoughts as his own, but is sociopathic enough to rip off those lines from a member of Camelot, no less, from RFK, long after RFK was assassinated, the tragic death. And to imagine that he could get away with it and get one past the American people, well, it was insane then, and it didn't happen, but it did this time. But once upon a time, the media was honest. Once upon a time, it mattered to the media when a politician lies or plagiarized. It mattered very much so. But then a man named Donald Trump came along, came down the escalators, and everyone lost their collective minds. Even now, the New York Times, while admitting there was plagiarism, can you believe this? Admitting their plagiarism, is also choosing to downplay it to the fullest possible extent. After all, we are talking about the New York Times, right? But look at the headline and the subheadline. Seriously, conservative activist seizes on passages from Harris's book. Conservative activist sees, come on. And then the subheader. A report by Christopher Rufo, who's a conservative activist, says the Democratic presidential nominee copied 5 short passages for her 2009 book on crime. A plagiarism expert said the lapses were not serious. See what they did right there in the headline? They've already discounted the story. They've already taken Christopher Russo's reporting of plagiarism by Kamala Harris, and they've already undermined it. They've already leg swept it. Not serious by plagiarism expert, not serious. That's not an opinion piece. That's the headline for a so-called news article. Not serious. How about let the American people decide just how serious it is, New York Times? The media is supposed to be an advocate for you and me, for the people. The media, by the way, is protected in the First Amendment to the Constitution. That alone should disqualify the New York Times as a credible journalism source. The New York Times, where actual journalism clearly goes to die. But this just shows you how dramatic the downfall is for the media. They don't seem to care at all about the voters who have to make an informed choice exactly 3 weeks, 21 days from today. But suddenly, the media has entirely different priorities. Plagiarism, totally forgiven. America killing policies, either downplayed or forgiven or forgotten entirely. They forgot that Joe Biden had a long, dark history of racism. We've played those sound bites over and over and over again. The man was racist, and now he's president. They willingly and collectively forgot his history of lying and plagiarizing. And why? Because the swamp killer, the deep state exposer, President Donald Trump, that's why. They're disregarding everything they know to get Trump. And after Joe Biden was exposed, the table of journalists and pundits asked the question, is this enough to end him?
Is Joe Biden dead meat, yes or no?
I think so.
Bob?
It's in terminal condition.
Terminal. Eleanor?
Yes, unless he comes in third in Iowa.
Morton?
Dying.
I say dead.
Well, back then it was, which leads us to the question, is Kamala Harris done? Does this finally do her campaign in for good? My answer to that is her failure shouldn't just be based on the fact that she plagiarized. It should be based on the fact that she's admitted that every single thing that's wrong with America right now has her fingerprints all over it. Oh, and again, she wouldn't change a thing. Are you listening, families of the 13 U.S. military folks killed when Biden-Harris administration left them to be slaughtered by a terrorist in Afghanistan? Are you listening, Lincoln Riley's family? Are you listening, people living in those Colorado apartments where Venezuelan gangs are trying to take control? Are you listening, mom and dad just trying to feed the family and yet still afford the rent? She wouldn't change a thing. And that, I think, should seal her fate 3 weeks from today. It most certainly should. All right, Kamala Harris is now interested in getting black men back on her side because she was sliding dramatically. Donald Trump was grabbing the male black vote. So she came up with this idea. The party of racism strikes in Kamala Harris bribing black men for their votes and insults them and all Americans. Hold on for a second. Look at that right there. Kamala Harris will create an opportunity agenda for black men. Think about that just for a second. Think about that for just 1 minute. For black men. So what about everyone else? What about white women? What about Hispanic women? What is this all about? You're trying to buy back votes. So Kamala Harris has a big problem. She just cannot win the support back of young black men, something Barack Obama was able to do in 2008, the first time he ran. based on false promises and just before he divided America based on race. This time around, Team Harris has tried sending in Obama. That failed miserably when he came down from his ivory tower, Obama did, for 5 minutes to berate black men for not voting for Kamala Harris. Well, that went poorly, to say the very least. America hasn't forgotten what a lot of what ails us in this country was all kicked off by one Barack Hussein Obama. Black Lives Matter was born out of Barack Obama's presidency, after all. So on Monday, Kamala unveiled a last-minute attempt at a lifeline with black male voters in the form of something called an opportunity agenda for black men. Well, at least she's not accusing them of sexism like Barack did last week. But this might be even worse, if possible. Listen to this. She's calling for $20,000 in forgivable loans for 1 million minorities to start a business. They're going to forgive it. They're telling you up front, they're going to give you the money, and don't worry, you don't have to pay it back. What do you think's going to happen? Of course they're not going to pay it back. They're basically grants that will likely be forgiven, but it's also unconstitutional. You can't allocate government loans on the basis of race. You can't do it. You cannot. What if you have a racist president who comes out and says only white people are going to get paid? White people don't have to pay taxes. Oh, you know what? You can't do it. You can't base it on race. And I don't know why she's pretending like she's going to be able to do it. How many people are going to get bought off, their vote bought for something that she cannot deliver on? Then again, unconstitutional has never been an issue for Democrats and their incessant vote buying. Just think of Biden's attempt to buy young people's votes with that student loan debt relief. Remember he did that? He went around. The Supreme Court said you can't do it, Joe. And he still did it. He went out and did it with executive order with his pen illegally. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And Harris, quite ironically, Miss Attorney General, also wants to legalize marijuana and alleviate drug convictions. Now, think about this. Kamala Harris, in part of this reach out to African-American men, wants to legalize recreational marijuana. Why? Why is that an opportunity agenda for black men specifically? Could the Democrats and Kamala Harris create even a worse racial stereotype? Is that possible? I don't know. I'm asking Kamala Harris. I won't even say it. I won't even say the other things that she could do that may appeal to African-American men. I mean, it's so insulting, is it not? And Kamala also pitched more government investment in black teachers. I don't know. Why not expand charter schools? They work better. Kamala Harris has only this to answer to black men: drugs and free money. This is what the Democrat Party thinks about Americans.
He's talking about the enemy within our country, Pennsylvania. He's talking about that he considers anyone who doesn't support him or who will not bend to his will an enemy of our country. It's a serious issue. He is saying that he would use the military to go after them. Think about this.
He said that? Where did he say? He said that he's going to put people in labor camps if they don't bend to his will. When did he ever say? Does anyone really think that would happen? Even if he did say it somewhere off the cuff as a joke somewhere, but I doubt it. I've never heard him say that. I heard him say he wants to deport illegals, the voting class that they're trying to bring in. Kamala Harris incites more violence against Trump. Basically, she's saying he's going to put people in camps. I'll tell you what, that would cause people to want to assassinate Donald Trump, would it not, Kamala? What about this whole medical records row? Listen.
I think a couple things. Number one, if I were Harris, I wouldn't be leaning too heavily into who's hiding what kind of medical conditions of people who are or want to be the president, given her role in lying about the condition of Joe Biden for the last 4 years. That's number one. Number two, I don't think this works for her. I think I'm back in the same bucket I was earlier. You're not selling your own candidacy. You're punching Donald Trump in the same way every other Democrat we've ever heard from for the last 8-9 years has punched this guy. That's not the problem with your campaign. We've heard all the attacks on Trump. If she cannot sell her own candidacy any better than just punching on him, for her, if I were in her camp, I just don't know it's going to be enough. That's my view.
But here,
Look, so they're worried about Trump's cholesterol, which, by the way, he tweeted or Truth this morning. He's like, "Don't worry about me, Kamala. My cholesterol is 180. Don't worry about me." And he says he's put it out there. I mean, it's really grasping at straws, right? If they're trying to hit Trump for his cholesterol levels, they really have nothing left to grasp onto. That's a failing candidacy. Mika Brzezinski, we love to talk about. Man, let me give you a little history of Mika and Joe. Joe and Mika were friends of mine. Joe Scarborough used to be very close to a lot of the people at Fox News who ran Fox News, Roger Ailes, Bill Shine. He was friendly with them. At one point, Fox was trying to get him over. Don't forget, Joe Scarborough used to be a Republican congressman in Florida. That's how he started his political career. He realized that being the foil, being the rhino and anti-Republican got him on television. He got to the point where he got his own show, marries Mika on TV. The two of them loved Trump to 1.0. Loved him going into the first election. Had him on all the time. Loved him. Couldn't stop talking about him. Trump wins. Trump doesn't give them any interviews. All of a sudden, they don't like him anymore. And then Trump says to Joe something about there was a young intern who died in Joe Scarborough's office early in his career. And Trump has said on television, what happened to the intern? Did Joe murder her? I mean, he just speculated. And Joe went negative on Trump, and they hate him now. They hate him with a passion. Mika hates him so much, she's almost in tears about Trump coming back and winning this election. Watch.
And women, I'm talking to you because this is about getting back our 50 years of rights so our daughters can be safe at the doctor. We know better. We know better than to wait for someone else to get this job done. We're women. We always come through for each other. So let's not miss this opportunity to step up for women, for families across the United States of America. And if you're frightened by the option of Donald Trump, don't just talk about all the things you think the Harris camp is doing wrong. Get to work. I know women will. Lauren Leader, you're one.
Sounds like a little quivering in the voice, a little welling up here. Verklempt, as they say. I don't know. Relax, Mika. Come on. No crying in politics. Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, remember we showed you yesterday, he went into I don't even know what kind of fast food restaurant it was, but the young ladies behind the counter came out and they thought they were taking pictures of Joe Biden. It was awesome. But Bill Clinton, they probably should retire this guy. I mean, just put him out to pasture because listen to what he's saying. Now, remember, Bill Clinton, maybe something in here is actually working with Bill, because I remember when he was president, he was for a strong border. He wanted a closed border. I remember a State of the Union address saying that we cannot afford to have an open border, and he was willing, a Democrat, willing to close the border. Well, some of the theories of some people on the right who say with an open border, the people coming across the border are taking jobs away from Americans. It's called the Great Replacement Theory. Tucker Carlson got into a little hot water with it. But Bill Clinton may be making the case for exactly what Tucker was talking about. Listen.
I don't think Americans are anti-immigration. They're anti-chaos. Right? They don't want us to do more than we can, but they recognize, at least most people do, we got the lowest birth rate we've had in well over 100 years. We're not at replacement level, which means we got to have somebody come here if we want to keep growing the economy.
He said the word. He said it himself, replacement. Listen, so that's the theory. Did Bill Clinton just, I don't know, align behind conservatives or some faction of the conservative movement? Well, Bill Clinton continues to, I think, hurt Kamala Harris's chances. You know, this guy was well-respected, a president, is an extremely well-respected Democrat. And he points out the same thing that we've pointed out time and time again over the last, I believe, 2 years ago, since Laken Riley was murdered by an illegal who was allowed to be here after being caught, was allowed to stay, and killed beautiful little Laken Riley. Listen to Bill Clinton.
In Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they're all properly vetted and that doesn't happen, and America is not having enough babies to keep our populations up, so we need immigrants that have been vetted to do work, there wouldn't be a problem. And he couldn't keep people all torn up and upset.
That's what we say. And again, there are those of us, I'm conservative, but I believe in a big entrance. In other words, a high wall to keep people out, but make the entrance bigger. Right now, we let in about 1 million people per year, vetted 1 million people per year legally. We should double it. Why not? Why not double or triple it? It brings in the right people that want to come here to work for the right reasons. It brings in tax revenue to America instead of having these people living in the shadows, not paying any taxes on it. It makes sense. Now, I know a lot of people don't like the fact that more South American or Chinese are coming in, but too bad. They're going to come either legally or illegally. Might as well make it legal, make it more sensible, make it more economic sense to America. But Clinton is saying some of the things that go against exactly what the Biden-Harris presidency administration has been about. They've looked the other way. Millions of people. Some say up to 9 million illegals have come across the border in the 4 years. If the number is that insane, they're not going to pay taxes. They're just hanging out on the side, just draining resources, going to our schools, getting paid credit cards, living in beautiful hotels. Meanwhile, we have veterans who are starving, committing suicide because they're homeless. It's upside down. Bill Clinton's right. And I don't think the Harris campaign was expecting Obama to step in dog crap with African-American male voters. I don't think they expected Bill Clinton to really highlight the fact that Lincoln Riley would probably be alive if they just vetted the illegals that were coming across the border. Absolutely incredible. And speaking of that, this whole idea, remember Martha Raddatz and J.D. Vance. Martha says only a handful of apartments in Aurora, Colorado are being taken over by violent Venezuelan gangs. And J.D. Vance, yesterday we talked about, says, are you listening to yourself? Well, take a look at this picture right here. That's a worker who works in one of those apartments in Aurora, Colorado. He was beaten senseless when he was trying to stop the Tren del Aragua gang from getting into some apartments in Aurora, Colorado. So this is America, folks. Americans getting beaten senseless by violent Venezuelan gang members, all at the behest of one, Kamala Harris, the border czar who wants to be your next president. All right, Bolling Truth Bomb here, always uncensored. Just say it how I mean it, and doesn't matter who I piss off. I really don't care. Brett Baier, I used to work with Brett over at Fox News. I think he was a good journalist. I think when Brett sat down with Donald Trump a year ago, he gave him a hard time. And I couldn't figure this. It was early in the campaign, and I believe at Fox News they wanted Ron DeSantis to be the nominee. I think they were pushing for that to happen. And so early in 2023. I believe Brett and Martha, maybe it was just Brett with Trump, and he gave him a hard time. And I remember Trump was really ticked off. I had Trump on my show at Newsmax just a little bit after that. He called in, and I asked him about that Brett Baier interview. Here's what he had to say.
And then you have a hostile network like Fox. Like when I did the interview with Brett, I thought it was fine. I thought it was okay, but there was nothing friendly about it. It was nasty. And I thought I did a good job. I've been given credit for doing a good job, but people said, why would you do it? Because it was really, everything was like everything was unfriendly. No smiling, no, let's have fun, let's make America great again. Everything was like a hit.
So here's the next question now. Brett has announced that he is going to interview Kamala Harris. So will Brett have the same gusto when he interviews Kamala Harris? A lot of people are still mad that Brett Baier was the one who called Arizona for Biden before calling Florida for Trump. A lot of people still believe that may have changed that election. Could be if people were still voting in Arizona, then maybe they didn't show up, or maybe they decided, it's already called, I don't need to go there and vote for Trump, and it was a very thin margin. So that's the theory. Will Brett hold Kamala Harris's feet to the fire about inflation, about the border? Will he? I don't know. And I know Trump is concerned about it. Look, he says, lying Kamala Harris has wisely chosen Brett Baier of Fox News to do a much-needed interview because he's considered to be fair and balanced, though often very soft to those on the cocktail circuit left. I would prefer seeing a more hard-hitting journalist, but Fox has grown so weak and soft on the Democrats, constantly polluting the airwaves with opposed Kamala Harris representatives, that it all doesn't matter anymore. Hopefully the people will understand on November the 5th and early voting make America great again. So, folks, the question is, will Brett be as tough on Kamala Harris as he was on Donald Trump? It remains to be seen, but we'll find out I believe that's going to air tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. It's, by the way, it's pre-taped. I mean, just do the interview live, Brett. Just do it live so people can't accuse you of cutting stuff, because all over the internet, he's going to edit stuff out that's bad for Harris. I mean, if you really want to come at it, just do it. Freaking do it live. All right, folks, Truth Bomb Bolling. And before we go, yesterday we brought you the story about the guy who they thought may have been a third assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life, a guy named Van Miller. I said it was a really odd story. It's just not making sense, because the whole idea that this guy would roll up on a rally with loaded guns in the trunk. There's the guy. And he defended himself, saying, I had the right to be there. I made a mistake of keeping the magazine in the gun. In Nevada, you're not allowed to do that. So he defended himself, and we said it seemed a little odd. Well, this morning I got not a voicemail, but a text from Roger Stone. Roger Stone's the guy, obviously, get me Roger Stone, political operative on both of Trump's campaigns. And Roger, I'm reading from Roger here. He says, hey, Bolling, I must have seen the show. Everything you have been told is false. He's 100% Trump supporter. His firearms are legally owned. He does not have a fake passport. His pass for the rally is legitimate. His license plates are valid, and he threatened no one. He was a Trump caucus captain for Nevada caucuses, and he met his quotas. He's been to over 20 Trump events. He's trying to say, I have appeared on his show. He's solid. He was never, ever questioned by the Secret Service or the FBI. And this is the part that's interesting. The claim that he had to post a $5,000 bond is false. He was issued a ticket because in Nevada, your gun and magazine must be kept separately, cannot be kept together. It's the only charge against him. The whole thing is bullshit, according to Roger Stone. Great political operative. It really didn't make sense if this guy was a threat or potential assassin to make him post $5,000 and let him out. None of that made sense. That's why it's kind of weird. But we'll take Roger Stone's word and say this guy is probably being used to make some sort of statement on gun control. I'm guessing that's going to come next. All right, folks, don't forget, subscribe to the show. Subscribe to the YouTube or Rumble or Spotify or Apple or anywhere you get your podcasts. If you want to call me, I have a whole bunch of them that I have lined up. I haven't played any recently, but there's a message. If you call toll-free, 888-601-0032, toll-free, 888-601-0032. Mention your name, your city, what you like, what you don't like about the show, what you want to hear, what you want to do, who's going to win, what your favorite pizza topping is. I don't care. I read them all. I listen to them all, and we'll put some on the show. We'll get back to that very soon. Bowling out for Tuesday, 3 weeks from now. We're going to all go to vote. Peace out.